Kia ora, my name is Jay from the Sustainable Business Council, and I'm joined today by Kate Wilson-Butler of Chapman Tripp. Welcome, Kate. Thank you for joining us today to talk about why modern slavery action matters. I feel like modern slavery as a concept and a phrase can seem quite confronting to businesses, but why do you think it still matters so much, specifically in a New Zealand context?
Thanks, Jay. I mean, modern slavery is a challenging term and it's a challenging concept for many businesses. I think maybe the correct term we should be using is anti-modern slavery or combating modern slavery or supporting human rights. And I think what's often misunderstood is that modern slavery combats a range of practices that not all of which would come to mind when you think of slavery. It can include things like debt bondage, forced labour, human trafficking. And I think what is easy to think as a business in New Zealand is that this all sounds pretty serious and doesn't sound like anything that would be happening in our country. Whereas, in fact, unfortunately, the opposite is true. Walk Free's Global Slavery Index estimates that around 8,000 individuals are in modern slavery conditions in New Zealand. That was a few years ago, so it may be a different figure now. So it's more prevalent here than we might think. Also, I think it's good to remember that New Zealand's on the end of very long global supply chains. So products and inputs that we import and that we use in goods and services that we produce here may also be produced in higher risk areas for modern slavery. So I think it's more relevant than many of us may hope to believe or wish it were.
And a lot of the focus rightfully at the moment is on the modern slavery bill. I suppose the challenge that comes with that is there's more of a risk or compliance lens that is brought to the topic. What changes when you perhaps take more of an action-orientated or a human rights approach to this topic?
I think it's really natural when a new regulated regime is being proposed, particularly when there are penalties and compliance deadlines, to look at it through that lens of risk and compliance. What we do see, though, is those entities who focus on the underlying issues, and we have the benefit of having worked with a range of entities who have been subject to regulated regimes in the UK and Australia, or have been voluntarily reporting for a few years now. Those entities that are focused on, where might modern slavery turn up in my supply chain? What are our risk factors? How are we building human rights standards into our processes and into our policies? Are naturally better set up to report. Put simply, I think if you're taking action, the reporting follows from that action, and you're not sitting there as the reporting deadline is looming wondering what you're going to put in your modern slavery statement, because the action almost writes the statement for you in a way.
I understand. And I know there's no one-size-fits-all approach for combating modern slavery, but is there any commonalities between the businesses that you think are doing well in this area? Anything that they are all doing that other businesses should consider?
Yeah, I think those organisations who've treated this as an opportunity to better understand some of their risks, including long-term risks, to test strategic resilience and to build what they find into their strategy, have reaped the real benefit of the reporting regime. There's a potential analogy, I think, with the climate disclosures regime, where absolutely you can treat that as a tick box exercise and just work to produce a climate disclosure at the end of the year. But actually those entities that have really leaned into scenario analysis and the risk assessment and found interesting, challenging things and used that to really improve their strategy and develop and pivot their business model, have, I think, found the true value of a regime like that. And I see analogies with the modern slavery regime.
Yeah, that makes sense. Before I let you go, this is non-legally binding advice. I feel the need to say this, talking to Chapman Tripp. But if businesses took just one step in the next 6 to 12 months to strengthen their approach, what would you recommend that step would be?
Yeah, so I think there's definitely no cause for alarm. We're still a wee way off having a regime in place. The legislation has a way to go in Parliament before it's passed, and then there's a lead time before the legislation is in force and the reporting obligations kick in. So there is time and there's no cause for panic. Having said that, it's a really good time to start a conversation internally if you haven't had one before or if it's been slightly dormant, raising these issues with the management team, with the board. And if you were to take one concrete substantive action, it might be helpful to map what you're already doing against what the reporting requirements look like they're going to be and assess is this something that we would be proud to put out into the market? Does this look like a modern slavery statement that we would be able to stand by, or are there areas where we want to work on in this lead time that we have before the obligations kick in?
Very sage as always, Kate. Thank you so much for joining me.